Okay, so hello everybody. We're still missing a couple people, but I'd rather get going than not. So today is our first lab, and I wanted to start off by first allowing our demonstrators to introduce themselves. So there are two demonstrators for this course. One of them is Tom Statham, and the other one is Lenka Hasova. So yeah, I think I'll pass it over to Lenka and then Tom to say a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves.
All right, I guess I will start. Can everybody hear me? I guess so. It's lit up. So hi, I'm Lenka. I am a second year PhD student in the advanced quantitative methods in geography, which can mean a lot of things, but basically my major point of the research is somehow manipulating with like a flow data and predicting how people move within the city and stuff like that. So if you're interested in it, just let me know, give me a message. I'll be happy to chat with you.
And then Tom.
Yep, so I was a second year ECOM student. My topic's a little bit different. I'm interested in population estimation in urban settlements using aerial interpolation methods. So if you're interested in that, contact me.
Cool, thank you. So they are both preeminent in their ability to use quantitative methods and should be able to answer anybody's questions about setup or you know, any of the workbooks for sure, and the assignments too. So the second thing I wanted to talk about today is on the business of rescheduling the Friday labs. So I've already received one email after my announcement last night. I have proposed that we reschedule the Friday labs to occur from noon to 2. All content in those labs will be recorded. So it's not like you're going to miss anything per se. And the main kind of benefit of you attending those in person will be that we're going to go over the answers to the assignments together. So if you just watch that back, you can obviously kind of follow the flow of the discussion, but it's much better if you're there because then you can ask specific questions about what you did and how it kind of either was right or wrong, how it may be graded. So the point of doing this is that these assessments are so frequent that last year we found that students would find it difficult to not receive feedback for 3 weeks after they submitted their assignment. So by doing this together, by going through the answers to the assignment together, students will get a lot better of a sense of what's going on. And I mean, they'll have the right answers because I'll have told them immediately after it's due that the right answer. So that would be my recommendation. We'll deal with extenuating circumstances and extensions and things like that later. That will be challenging for this model, but I think it'll be fine. So for Fridays then, 4 people cannot make the Friday move from 4 to 6 if we put the new lab at noon to 2 p.m. on Fridays. Now I've already received one person who spoke up. Is there anybody else who wants to either comment in the chat or speak up now with their mic to let me know any concerns? Eli?
I was going to say, but I think I've got the wrong day. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. A lecture 12 to 1, some people are saying, for this week only. Okay. what we could do is we could flip the Friday so that when you're done with your lecture, then we do the answers. So I could start the answers at 1 o'clock. Would that be a suitable compromise for this week? It won't take us an hour to go through. Okay, I can do that. We'll do the answers at 1 o'clock this week. We might do that in later weeks, depending on what things are. And then I'm going to send every single person in this course a calendar invite through Outlook that will have our new Friday lab time. Awesome, Josh. Yeah, I think everybody there's something going on 12 to 1 that may conflict. My main concern with moving the time is that by doing this, we sort of permanently force people into a situation where they're not able to attend part of the scheduled lab. And I do not want to do that. So I have an extensive amount of office hours on Mondays that you should be able to access if there's a concern with your ability to attend practical on Friday. So that would be my secondary recommendation. But it seems like there were 4 people that had conflicts on Fridays. So as long as you're okay with doing the answers at 1 o'clock on Fridays and then moving the entire lab from noon to 2, then I think that's what we'll do. Can I get thumbs up or thumbs down from folks using the Reacts or? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go now to talk about getting your environment set up. So I want to make sure that everybody has the ability to sort of do things well in the course, and part of that is having consistent access to an efficient and correct Rstudio installation. So first off, getting things set up correctly for your computer involves a couple of different steps. First, as I share screen, can everybody see? People are still entering the waiting room. Cool. So everybody can see my shared screen. Great. Okay, so first off, it is generally very simple to, oh no, Jesus. It's generally very simple to get, why is this being like this? Hold on, sorry, I need to restart this. There we go. Portion of the screen, share. Cool. Okay, so it's generally very simple to get Rstudio installed on your local computer. If you go to rstudio.com, there's this website of all this, information about Rstudio and the platforms and various kinds of installations you need. So if you go to products and Rstudio, you get to the page just for Rstudio. What we need to do is install Rstudio Desktop. If you click that, it'll automatically scroll you down to 2 panes in this table. You'll have Rstudio Desktop here, Open Source Edition, and Rstudio Desktop Pro. All you need is the Rstudio Desktop. If you click this, it'll take you to yet another page. All you have to do is click the option where you do not have to buy anything, and you always need to click the option relating to desktop. So Rstudio Desktop, if you download that, it'll take you down to a table where you can see the correct version for each of your platforms. If you're on Windows, you download the windows.exe. If you're on a Mac, you use the .dmg file. And all these ones, I don't think anybody's on Linux, but if you're on Linux, you probably know how to install software on your system. Does anybody have any questions to this point? I'm looking for hands raised in the participant list. Nope. Okay. So that's one way, is to install RStudio by downloading these kinds of things and then just installing it on your local computer. Well, I'll let you see what it looks like when you install software on a Mac. So I've downloaded the RStudio DMG. I'm opening the RStudio DMG. And what happens is I get this window, which has the RStudio application and my applications folder. You have to click and drag RStudio into applications. Now I have RStudio already installed on this computer, so I'm not going to replace it. If you have an older version of RStudio, it's okay to click replace. On Windows, you should go through an installation process, and then you should just have RStudio. When you use RStudio, the way that you install software packages is using the install packages command. So going to RStudio, if I wanted to install a package, let's say Carbase, I need to, yes, indeed, I did mean Carbase. In order for me to install a package, I use the package called, or I use this install packages command. If I need to install packages, I might get an option or a question saying there's a binary version available, but the source is later. Binary versus source. Unable to locate our binary by scanning the standard locations. Okay. Lauren, can we pop you into a, are other people, give me a thumbs up if other people are having this particular problem. Okay. I'm not seeing any other thumbs up. So I'm going to make a breakout room for you. And then Tom and Lenka, do you want to take this? So, boom. Okay. Let's see if this works. Cool. Emily, that's okay. If it says to install the developer tools, we'll do a breakout room in a second about that. Maybe I shouldn't have done both of them. We'll iron out some of these things in a second, but I've got that down, Emily, and we'll make sure that we have a correction there. Does anybody have this issue with the OSX command line tools? Because this is a common problem people have. Maybe I'm not just seeing Reacts anyway. Yeah, so we can address this in a second. So I think everybody knows the install packages command to install packages. The main things that you need to be installing for this course is the tidyverse package, which should give you nearly everything that you need. And then the LME4 package. And you'll see when this is required in the labs. with these two packages, you should be able to do everything that we have to do in the course. So the second option that I would highly recommend for students is actually the Windows Virtual Desktop for students and staff. So this is a SharePoint website in the new IT services domain. I've just put it in the chat. If you go to the IT services web page, it will make you, oh, I signed into Turing. It will make you sign in, and then you have this kind of landing page. And if you search Windows Virtual Desktop, it'll come up in the search results. So the Windows Virtual Desktop is our kind of recommended way to run your instruction this year. So if you want to, use Rstudio and you want to have a really reliable setup that doesn't rely on your own computer, and you don't want to deal with sort of setting up and installing Rstudio and how difficult that can be, use this. How this works is I'll walk you through it right now. So anybody who's on that website who clicked it in the chat or has found it now, I would recommend you walk through this with me because the user experience is actually quite nice. So you go to this URL in the page. I'm going to paste that in the chat as well. So you go to that URL. And it gives you this kind of launch page. You click on this University of Bristol Open Access icon, and it'll say connecting and launching open access. What this is doing is spinning up a virtual computer inside of this thing called the Microsoft Azure Cloud. It's just like, a big virtual computing service that Bristol now pays for. And it basically gives you a Windows desktop inside of your browser. So if I enter my Bristol credentials, it's going to pull me a desktop. So this desktop is in my browser. You see this is Google Chrome, but it's a tab that's just for this virtual desktop. Okay? So when you have this, you should also be able to run Rstudio in the virtual desktop as if it's your own computer. So this will give you like a Windows style installation in the cloud that you can use no matter what. Okay. So this is the recommended kind of university way outside of a local installation to run Rstudio. And everybody should have access to this. It should be, remarkably high connectivity. And just like before, in this, you can install packages like LME4, which we'll use later on in the course. Or you can install Tidyverse. Cool. Now, the second thing is getting your Rstudio connected with your OneDrive. So lots of students have asked me questions about this. In a Windows computer, if I open up the Explorer, the File Explorer here, you can see all the different places that are connected to your computer. And you'll note that the OneDrive folder here is where you might keep a bunch of your school-related stuff. And that's where the university recommends that you keep content. So when you're in Rstudio, you can use your OneDrive as well. If you use the, oh God, see now, sometimes I forget about this. If you click the 3 dots all the way on the right-hand side of the Explorer, the file pane here, down in the bottom right, it'll bring up a Go to Folder dialog. And this will let you select your OneDrive, and then maybe if you have a folder where your content lives for this course, you navigate there in your file selector and click Open. That will put your Rstudio directly in to the folder in your OneDrive. So I've just taken you to my last year's folder stored in OneDrive. So again, to show that, in Rstudio, I'm going to go back to my home. So I can't see OneDrive down here in my file lists. You know, I don't know where it is in my computer. I click the 3 dots on the right-hand side, which is tooltipped as Go to Directory. It'll pop up a file explorer here. And then I select OneDrive. And maybe, you know, I've made a folder that says Geographic Data Science or something like that. And I select that folder, click Open, and then I have it in my file browser. To set it as your working directory, then you have to use this More, Set as Working Directory. Okay? So all those steps are necessary to get your workspace set up. I see in the chat now, breakout room has closed. Yeah, but we'll keep doing this.
It was weird because the breakout room was only was working for like 5 to 10 minutes or something like that, and then it's automatically closed.
I see. Okay, I thought the student popped out. Anyway, we'll talk about it. I think that what we'll do from now on is that I have Lanka in one, Tom in another, and then when students come up. Do we have to download R as well as Rstudio? You may, Sophie, if you need to download R directly, you go to rproject.org, is it? No. Maybe it's, yeah, r-project.org. I'll put the link in the chat. I was under the impression that Rstudio packaged R along with it, but if it doesn't. So this is the standard website for the R project. R as a computing language is slightly different than Rstudio, which is technically an interface to it. So in this case, you would download the R version 4.0.3. Wait, is this the source code? To download R. Geez, this is not nice. So I don't think that you would need to do this directly, but R latest should give you what you need. Let's see. No, that will be a make. That's the source. So for, yeah, that's where it is. Why did they hide it like this? I believe that if you download R, you should be able to if you download Rstudio, you should be able to have a binary installation of R that's embedded inside of that. That's my understanding. If it can't find that, then you may need to download a binary version of R, and we can help you do that in a breakout room. But the two kind of recommended methods are using a local installation, or as I've shown you, using this Windows virtual desktop to access an Rstudio instance. So between one of those two things, you should always have the ability to access Rstudio. Where can you find a list of the packages that you need to download for the course? I haven't built like a whole set of packages, but as I've shown here, the two that are primarily important are the packages in the tidyverse. So if you just install packages tidyverse, and then you install LME4. Emily, not a silly question at all. All you have to do is go File and Quit Session. Sometimes it may prompt you with a thing to save your session. If you do that, then that's the correct way to fully quit out of the session. So my recommendation, like as like a very candid, kind of like, I think the easiest thing for most people is going to be to use this Windows Virtual Desktop. It's very nice. It should have complete, we've been assured by IT that it has a complete sort of host of all the tools that you're going to need. And it should have really good availability. Even in spotty internet connections, it performs pretty well. And then you can, use like a web browser kind of thing that opens the tab as a pop-up window. So then you just have one window, which is your remote desktop. And then you have your Rstudio instance inside of it. And that also will connect you directly to your OneDrive if you use the method that I've shown you. So between those two, does anybody still want individual help on doing the local installation or accessing the Windows Remote Desktop? Cool. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional requests in the chat. So at this point, what I'd like to do is, yeah, that's fine, Sophie. So some packages will depend on other packages. LME4 is, yeah, sure, Lauren, I'll pop you into one. Okay. If we use the remote desktop, will we have to install packages every time we want to use it? No, you shouldn't have to do that every time you want to use it. It should persist this session across your individual your account. So every time you log in, it should put you somewhere close to where you left off. So, okay, I'm going to pop you, Lauren, in a room there. So let's open that room. Great. And then did someone else need some help as well? You can private message in this if you want, if you click on the person's name. Does anybody else need help with setup or loading something like LME4 or tidyverse? You should just be able to type library tidyverse. And you see something like this, or library LME4, and you might see stuff like that. That's totally fine. The resolution of the virtual desktop seems to be quite low. Is that normal? No, it's not. You might be able to change that in the settings up at the top of the remote desktop. However, I'm not sure. That's not a good user experience. You might try and make it full screen, but I'm not sure, no. So I'll sort of continue to let people, yeah. So let's see. Would that be, Lenka, where would that be?
You mean the resolution?
Yeah.
In tools, in the Rstudio, in the actual Rstudio,
Oh,
there is
really?
the tools, and there is a global option, and you can change the resolution. You can appearance. There's the appearance tab. Yeah, you can change the
The
resolution.
zoom, you
You
mean?
can see the, yeah, you can change the look as well, the colors,
Sure.
whatever you fancy.
So that might help, Cracker, but I'm not sure exactly how to adjust that. But the zoom option in there should help a little bit. It also might be a function of the size of the window. Sometimes if the window is oddly sized, the remote desktop window is oddly sized, then things can be sort of odd. Are there any kind of questions on any further questions on getting your environment set up? Would anybody like a breakout room to chat with Lenka? Everybody's good? Okay. Then what I'd like to do is move on to some of the content in the workbook. So let's go work, teaching, GDS, content, workbooks, cool. Okay. So I don't intend to do much lecturing. However, I did want to show you a couple of further examples of the tools that we're going to be using. So in the code in the workbook, you may see something like this symbol here in the code browser that I've input. So this symbol, % greater than %, I need to library my tidyverse. This symbol is called a pipe. So if I have a data frame like temps, which was what we were working with the other day, remember, with the year on one column and then the months on the other column, and I want to say do that pivot longer call on temps from Jan to December to get this transformation, I can use pivot longer as a traditional function. It takes a data frame as its first argument and then some other collection of things after that. What the pipe allows you to do is say, okay, I want to take the first argument and make it something to the left. So you can kind of think of it as the thing on the left is getting passed to the thing on the right as its first argument. So doing this is the same thing as using temps as the first argument. They give you the same result. Why would we want to use the pipe? Well, there are a lot of nice things you can do when you want to chain together multiple functions. One example would be if you want to use something called a group by. So a group by is a function you'll see soon in the workbook. Group by takes your data frame and a column that tells you what group each row is in. So for our data here, in the example that I give in the workbook, we might be constructing a climate curve where we want to get the average temperature in each month over all of the years in our data set. So I would get the data to a tidy format where each column contains one variable and each row contains exactly one measurement. So once I've got my data into a tidy format, then what I can do is use a group by. So when you have a group by, so let's call this long temps. If I have that long temperature data, which you should also see how to get the code in the workbook, I might want to do a group by. Oh, no. And I might be doing a group by for every month. What this does is it constructs an implicit kind of thing that describes the grouping you want to apply to the data frame. So you notice that long temps just says a tibble that has 1428 by 3 values. And so we have the 3 columns, and then we have a bunch of rows. If I run the group by on long temps, and I group the observations by the name, which is the month, you see that it says groups. Name, which is the column that it's grouping on, and then 12, which is the number of groups there are. Group by is often paired by another function called summarize. So if I summarize this group's data frame, well, let's make this a little easier and assign it a temporary. So we could say grouped by month. Okay. Now grouped by month looks exactly the same. Grouped by month looks exactly the same as long temps, but all it has is that group designator up top. Now, I can summarize each group. So let's say grouped by month, and I might get the mean value in that group. So just to show that again, I'm using summarize on the thing that I've grouped to get the average value within each group. So this is the average temperature in every row that has one of those month values. So for all of the years in April, the average temperature is 9.5 degrees Celsius. And for all the years, the average temperature in August is 16.8. So summarize works by doing what they call a reduction over every group. It's just a summary measure of what the group contains. So I might say that my mean temperature is equal to the mean value there. And I get a new tibble after I summarize. That is the name and the mean temperature. Okay? The reason why we find it nice to use the pipes is because I can go all the way from my temperature data, which looks like this, to do the pivot longer, and I want to pivot January to December with the names to month and the values to temperature to get that. So I can do the pivot. Maybe let's split these out over some rows so that there's a little bit better spacing. And then I can do the group by month. And then I can do a summarize by month, or summarize mean temp is equal to mean temperature, and get the same data frame without having to do those intermediate steps. So the nice thing about using the pipes is that you can do one step, okay, I know what that looks like, and then do the next step. Oh, the group by, I know what that looks like. And then do a final step. It allows you to string together computations. What's the advantage of writing the code in rows? Kate, do you mean like splitting it between multiple lines? I'm only doing that to improve readability. It's easier for you to read the code if it's in multiple lines like that. Some styles of programming suggest that you shouldn't go any longer than 80 characters in a single column. That's kind of archaic, but it's just easier to read this than if I were to say, keep it all on one line like that. But you can do that if you like. It's not a big deal. It just gets hard because then you have to scroll sideways to see what's going on. That's all. Okay. So group by and summarize are like pairs of operations. Group by collects things together in a group, and summarize lets you describe that group. In the workbook, you'll see that you're able to use group by in a couple of different ways and summarize in a couple of different ways. Those are both data transformations. They take your input data and they do something to it, and they give you a new data that's still tidy. It's just been transformed. And there are a couple of different kinds of verbs in the tidyverse that do that. So ones that you may find useful are things like filter. So the filter function, this filter function is the one in dplyr, which is a tidyverse library. It's not the one that does linear filtering on a time series. So remember, if you want help on a function, you can always use question mark and the function name to get. So filter allows you to select individual rows. So filter temps, let's say year greater than, or wait, we need, so if we have this, let's say, come on. This is why we use multiple lines. So in the lab, we'll be working with this long data frame. So I'm going to call that long temps. So you might have this data frame, long temps, after you do the transformation. And if you wanted to just get the years that were, say, after 1960, you'd use filter. What this will do is apply the condition based on the columns in the function on the right to the thing that you send it on the left. Now, our data would contain only rows where year is greater than 1961. You can string filters together. So I can filter once and then filter again. So that's only January's since 1961. Or you can also use the and to do a filter that's a complex filter that has one condition on the left of the and another condition on the right of the and. You've seen these before when using subset, but subset is a little bit trickier to master than filter. So you might do Jan, or month is equal to Jan, and get January temperatures since 1960. Okay, so that's filter. An analog of that for columns is select. Select lets you just pick individual columns, or it lets you drop columns. So filter allows you to work on rows and subset your data on the rows, and select lets you subset your data on the columns. Group by lets you specify groups in your data, and then summarize lets you reduce those groups into single or multi-number summaries. Okay? The workbook should explain this quite well and should give you a couple of different examples of data transformations. That's about all I wanted to cover in the sort of talky talk part of this, this practical. But I think what we'll do from now is have breakout rooms that will assign students to if they need additional help. My recommendation would be go straight through the workbook and then ask us questions either in chat or via voice in the main room. And then if there's any kind of additional thing you need, we'll set up a breakout room and work together on that. Does that work for everybody? Cool. I really need to figure out a way to see your reacts in the participant list. Anyway, okay. What is tomorrow's practical about if the assignment isn't due till week 3? It's just kind of getting your head back into the material. You're more than welcome to go at your own pace. So I'm not going to stop you if you decide to go on to workbook 1 and assignment 1. But tomorrow's practical will just be trying to get your head around the stuff in the workbook and in the assignment. So yeah, thanks, Hannah. Should we set up a separate R project for every week's workbook? Good question. My recommendation would be to, I didn't tell you this. So all the content is on ljwolf.org/teaching/GDS, right? And there are links from the Blackboard into this website. So if you want, say, the workbook, you've got a particular URL here in your browser. If you change the HTML to .rmd, you can download the R Markdown file for that lab or that assignment. My recommendation would be that you start with that R Markdown file and add yourself as an author. Or you make a new R Markdown file and you copy from my source into your answer. So I wouldn't recommend doing a separate R project for every week's workbook, but I would recommend having an individual R notebook for every assignment or workbook I give. Does that make sense? Cool. Will final assignments be submitted as markdowns? My recommendation would be to get the assessment submitted as a either a PDF or a Word document. So when you knit an R Markdown, as I think you all have done in spatial modeling too so far, when you knit an R Markdown, you can choose individual kind of targets for that. I would prefer a Word or a PDF. PDF is the best for me. But you can submit it either as the raw R Markdown, as the PDF, or as the Word document. I'm not strict on that. If you're not able to get your assignment to knit, then it usually means there's a problem in your code. So you want to make sure that you have that all kind of ironed out. We have the lab 1 assessment deadline next Thursday. That should have been moved to week 3. The assessment deadline should be as they are in my syllabus. So they should be As you see here, it shouldn't be due until week 3, October, whatever that is, 2 weeks. It is now the 22nd. Yeah, that should be correct. So it's the week of this sculpting data assignment is not due until week 3 on Thursday. But then very quickly after that, the next one is due on week 5. Okay, so it's kind of a slower initial couple of weeks just so you can get your head back into using R. And then we go straight off. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions about that kind of stuff? Yeah, sometimes I will want commentary written alongside the code. So in the sculpting data assignment, you know, you'll see, say in 1.1, there are some minor changes that will go into this probably during the lab, but you see here, you know, the following data set of temperatures from the Filton weather station has different tidiness problem than something I'm talking about before. What problem is that, and how can you tell? So I'm going to expect a short explanation of what you're thinking about in that response. So never more than like a paragraph. I'm not looking for an essay. And indeed, you know, if you write a lot of really long text, these are going to be very difficult. And my recommendation is not. If you've got correct code and I can tell you understand what you're talking about from your discussion, you're fine. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be, you know, highfalutin, if that makes sense. Emily, is there a word count? There's not a formal word count. It's kind of hard to give word counts on things that mixed text and code. However, as I said before, it shouldn't, like I'm looking like 2 or 3 sentences max for some of these things. So like a response for question 1 in the assignment might be, you know, this data frame, you know, mixes variables over columns, let's say, a problem of tidiness that we've talked about before. So I want you to know what that is in the Wickham and just give me a straightforward answer of what it is and then how the data set does it. So 2 or 3 sentences max. I'm never asking for an essay here. And if you have any concerns or questions about it, raise it in a lab and we can talk about how long that should be. So again, like I said, these are so frequent and so, you know, they're about checking that you can do the thing and that you understand what you're doing. They're not necessarily about kind of longer, more sophisticated ruminations on the meaning of the statistical approach. So it's much more about giving you the skills that you need to do what you need to do. Okay, cool. Well, I've built 3 breakout rooms that I think, so let's say that common room. So I've built some breakout rooms that students can pop into if they want to discuss individual aspects of questions. But otherwise, what I think we should do is comment in the chat because that seems to be more reliable. I'll keep my video on, but I'll turn my audio off. And then if students have questions, please just pop in the chat, hey, can I talk to someone? And we'll pop into a breakout room between Lenka, Tom, and me. Sound good? Cool. And this will go for another hour. So my recommendation right now is to work through the workbook on the website. So just so everybody knows where that is 00-workbook.html. And I'll put it in the chat. And it's also linked to in the course Blackboard. So we did some of this before together, and then we haven't done the rest of it. Sophie, we have 3 weeks to complete. You have 3 weeks to complete the assignment, sculpting data for fun and profit, which is in the schedule and also is listed on the, we'll go to the Blackboard. So when you're in the course Blackboard, you see workbooks and assignments. The workbook is just there for you to kind of work through the code that you might need for the assignment. And it contains explanation from me about the concepts and code that'll be involved. The assignment is actually the thing you have to do. So the workbook is optional. If you don't, if you look at the assignment and you say, oh, I know immediately how to, I know immediately what the answer to 1.1 is, and I think I know how I would tidy the data to do 1.2, then just do that. But the workbook is there kind of like in spatial modeling too. Some students find it helpful to have some exposition and examples of code for them to learn off of. So the workbook is optional. The assignments is what you have 3 weeks to complete. And that should be deadlined on the 22nd, which is the Thursday in 2 weeks. Awesome. Any other questions on general course organization? Good question. The data is linked in the Blackboard, and that should be a zip file that contains all the data in the course. My recommendation is to just unpack that into a place where you put your answers and you just use that forever. Will anything else come up in the assignments that aren't covered in the workbooks? Yeah, there'll be stuff from the reading. So the workbooks are just there as example code. Do we need the data for the workbook? Yes, you do. You can also, I think it's gds/data.zip is the direct download. So yeah, so as we talked about in the first lecture, my recommendation, okay, you can access that through Blackboard. Sophie, I've put the data into the chat right there. Everything is hosted on my website because I knew that people would have some issues accessing Blackboard given how reliable it's been so far in the term, which is also why I'm hosting my recordings on YouTube. So just to give a quick overview again, because it seems that it's confusing. So my recommendation for you to do this course is to do the reading in a week. You do that reading hopefully by our lecture on Monday. At worst, you do it by Thursday. Then for that chunk, that entire 2-week block, attempt the workbook and then attempt the assignment. Reading, then workbook, then assignment. If you want to go quick, do the reading and then go straight for the assignment and then refer back to the workbook as a reference. Okay? But that's kind of how it is. Outside reading beyond what I've recommended, that is not required in this course. I think you'll find that the reading that's listed in the schedule on the website is sufficiently enriching that you probably won't need any additional. Now, I've given you some additional references to answer questions, but I don't expect you to read FDA or advanced R or geocomputation in R at all. If it's just there for your reference, nothing additional is expected of you beyond what I've given you here. Okay? Yeah, I can repeat that. Grace asks, could you repeat what you said about downloading the workbook as an R Markdown file? So for any time you see an assignment that ends in HTML or a workbook that ends in HTML, you can change it to RMD and download the R Markdown file. Alternatively, in the course Blackboard, you see these little links that say RMD after them. That will give you the source file that corresponds to the HTML on the left. Okay? So I've always given you a paired representation. Does that make sense, Grace? Do you have access to what you need? Excellent. Glad to hear it. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing at this point. Does anybody else have any other questions? Cool. Okay, so we'll hang out here for the next hour. My recommendation is to go through the workbook, try the code examples, or if you want to just move on to the assignment, go to the assignment. That's super great. I'm going to turn my audio off and stop the recording, or maybe pause the recording so that if there's any announcements and stuff that gets checked. And then, yeah, just message in the chat if you need help, and then we'll build you a breakout room. So cool.